thank you all for coming. It's great to see you tonight. Um, if we could please let the record show that we met in executive session to discuss matters leading to the employment, promotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or person, collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. Thank you, Betty. Our first order of business, Dr. Gia Rizzo, is our student recognition.
And
We're
we
going to
have a lot to recognize tonight. Hello, how are you? So, could you
I will join you,
you wanna
as
join me?
will Rodriguez.
Okay, so tonight. Any of our music educators with us tonight?
Yes, Mr. Berry and Ms. Hackman.
All right, come on up. Okay, so if you have been in North Shore for any more than 32 seconds, you know that our music program is unbelievably strong, filled with kids with all kinds of talent, administrators and teachers who care so deeply about children and foster their growth. And it's just like an honor. It is not like an honor. It is an honor to be the superintendent who gets to lead that. So tonight, we have invited a whole bunch of you here who have been to either all county or all state or all national as musicians. So before we get started and before we, yes, let's give everybody a round of applause. So we're going to start with our all-county musicians, and when you come up, we will call your name, we will shake your hand, we will give you an obligatory North Shore pen, we will give you a certificate. Okay, so tonight we honor our all-county musicians first, and student musicians who performed in all-county were based on their NYSBA Soul Festival performance last spring. As participants, students performed challenging repertoire under the direction of master conductors. Okay, are you ready? This is chorus. Thank you. Philomena Barbo. And then we ask you to stay here because when you're done, we take a little picture of everybody. Gianna Bertolini. May Curiali. She can sing. I ran into her in New York City singing. Danielle D'Amelio. Thank you. Juliana Agueda. Can I get that?
Congratulations.
Thank you. Julia Garacci. Samantha Glatt. Eliana Gonzalez Levy. Renata Gonzalez. Grace
no, really, we're very flexible. Nothing else.
Okay, so now we're going to bring up our band students. Sahana Gibbons. Seamus Hughes. Erica Judd. Nicholas Koukouris. Aquina McDermott. Aquina McDermott. Cameron Miller. Jacqueline Morton. Michael Mullins. Abigail Neese. Olivia Nolan. Jessica Palin. Eric Wagner. Eli Wesley Jones. Orchestra. We're going to take a quick picture. Yes, we are.
Can we all fit in this shot? No, I think. Okay, so you guys are gonna wait and keep going. You go in. And there we go. Maybe you go in front of him. I forgot what we're gonna do.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Orchestra. These are them?
Okay, now for our orchestra students. Colin Davis. Sophia F.
That's what we're talking about.
Say it again. Say it. Come on up. And good job. Thank you. Kenneth Tom.
stage first.
Okay. So our next group of honorees are all-state musicians. This year, 6 North Shore High School students were invited to participate in the All-State Festival at the 83rd NYSSMA Annual Winter Conference in Rochester. Thousands of students auditioned for this honor last spring at solo ensemble festivals throughout the state. And I want to say congratulations to the following student musicians for receiving this very prestigious honor. Here you are. Pardon me? Okay, so Christine Ramirez. Here. Emma Sorensen. Kayla Sorensen. Also not here. All right.
It is midterms
I
week.
know it is.
We
All-
applaud them, their dedication to music and academics.
All true. Okay. And so, is Hannah here?
Yeah.
Yes, here she is. Okay. Hannah has probably more North Shore pens than we have in our office. Right? So we want to say congratulations to Hannah Leventhal for being selected to perform with the mixed choir at the National Association for Music Education's 2018 All National Honor Ensembles. Come on up, let me brag on you a little bit. Okay, I'm not done yet. So eligible students have qualified for their state-level honor ensemble program and competed against top students from schools in the country for a spot in the National Honor Ensemble. The 2018 All-National Honor Ensembles took place at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort, which happens to be very nice, right? At Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. And this is for choral.
Yes.
Yes? Now you also have to know that Hannah also plays a cello, right? Quite well. So good on you. Congratulations. You have made us very, very proud of you. Congratulations. We wish you much success.
No, so down.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good, thank
We'll see you
you.
next time. That was fun.
A tremendous thank you to all of our educators who did such an amazing job of supporting our children, not only in getting ready for the event, but even through this long series of events. I know I saw, for example, Mr. Mordhorst on a cold sidewalk on 7:30 on a Saturday morning, getting the kids on the bus so they could go to rehearsal. Thank you to the parents who were dropping those kids off at 7:30 and have supported your kids in getting this far. But most of all, I want to recognize the students. We see and recognize all the hard work you guys put into getting to this. We recognize the dedication it took to get here, and we truly appreciate and value your accomplishments. Thank you for coming tonight. And on that note, it is midterms week for some of you, and for some of you, it's just late. Feel free to go home, and feel free to stay and hear our update on the strategic plan, which will also be extremely interesting. I'm going to stay, but it's your call. Hi.
Oh, sure. Yeah, she probably does. You said Christina Ramirez? Yeah.
You know her? She's been here many times. She can sit one out. She can sit one out.
She the one that performed for us?
Yes.
Amazing. Amazing. I assume it's not your daughter because you're picking up for her, or you? Oh, she's
Trustees, while everyone is filing out. Trustees, we will proceed. Action 3 is the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. We'll move on to number 4, which is the report of the superintendent. Dr. Giarrizzo, when you're ready.
Okay, great, thank you. So, one more time, I just wanted to say congratulations to our musicians, all national, all state, all county. In a little while, I'm going to provide the board with an update on the status of our work towards our annual goals and our strategic plan. And while we're only at the midpoint of the year, I'm pleased to report that much good work is happening and we are well on our way to meeting our established targets over the course of the school year. I would also want to provide the board with an update on our search to recruit a new assistant superintendent for instruction. Our advertising efforts yielded 88 applicants. We invited 24 of the most promising candidates for interviews, and then Olivia and I began that process last night. We will then invite candidates to meet with committees before the February break, and will remain positioned for the board to interview candidates during early March. You should know that we have attracted a really impressive pool of candidates, and that's really good news for and about our schools. Our budget preparations are in the final stages, and our tax cap has been calculated at 2.701. This is the result of the strong CPI, the growth factor, and other exemptions. We do not have a final budget to present yet, but we'll be prepared to present that at our next board meeting. Budget books are being assembled. Our pre-bond work is continuing, and I thank Olivia and John Hall and our members of the Bond Steering Committee, Sarah Jones, Dave Ludmar, and Mary Ann Russo, for working so hard to keep this process moving along. We've worked closely with our new architects to scope the work into pre-identified areas of infrastructure, use of instructional space, health and wellness, safety, security. And then our aim is to present a tax-neutral spending plan. As you could likely imagine, we have way more projects than we can actually afford. For example, we have about $60 million worth of infrastructure projects alone in various stages of need over the course of the district. Does anybody want to guess how many square feet of facility space we have to maintain?
I'm a little spatially challenged. I'm not going to guess.
520,000.
Really?
It's a lot. Yeah, 500. We have 520,000 of square feet of physical space to maintain.
I don't think you give us long enough to guess.
Oh, it's,
Sorry.
next week will be how many acres? You can come back and. It's good.
What did you think?
More people would come if we had trivia.
Okay. On Tuesday, we'll be launching an online survey tool called Thought Exchange, and that Thought Exchange is an online conversation that will allow you to share your ideas and then rate the ideas of others based on how important you feel that they are, and this will all relate to the pre-bond work. We'll be asking our community members, parents of all of our faculty and staff, as well as students in grades 3 through 12 to weigh in on this. And our architects will be conducting community focus groups within the next several weeks, and then we will bring all of this information back to our bond advisory committee after the results of our data and efforts are presented to the full board here on February 28th. So things are very much in motion. If there are, once that link becomes live for that thought exchange, if there are particular Facebook sites or social media sites that they can be pushed to, just we can figure that out. I'm pleased to report that to present the 2019 calendar is finally here for the board's consideration this evening. We just got the BOCES calendar about a week ago. Pending approval, it will be distributed via email to the community and posted to the website tomorrow so people can lock down their plans and whatnot for the upcoming school year. Lastly, I'm pleased to welcome our new Coordinator of Safety and Security, Mr. Oldham, to North Shore. He just started. His work is already moving forward, and an update to the board and community will be forthcoming, and I want to thank the board for your continued support as we enhance conditions that promote safety and security for our faculty, staff, and students. It's very much appreciated by everybody. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. We appreciate the information. And
welcome.
next up, we will move on to the report from our SGA.
Okay. Obviously, we're sitting in for John and Matt. I'm Alyssa Day, the senior class president, and this is Catherine Igo. She's the treasurer of the SGO. And at North Shore, we've had a lot of stuff going on recently, especially as a senior class. We just had the senior play, which, as far as I know, the first night accumulated $3,500 for the senior class.
Oh.
A lot of seniors participated, including myself. And recently we've been working on sports night, voting on themes and such. But I think most importantly as an SGO, Joanna Commander is coming to work with us with CASA. Ms. Lempensky, the leader of the SGO, sent out a survey for all of the SGO members interested in helping the cause of CASA, whether it be sending out a survey to get like information as far as what our students are up to, videos to go on the TVs that have now been put in the hallways, meeting with North Shore alumni at town meetings. So that's currently in the works as far as assigning members of the SGO to those jobs. I know for myself, I just filled out that survey recently. So at the next meeting, alongside getting together sports night, CASA will be definitely a point of discussion, and it's on the move.
Terrific.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much for the
If
information.
I can just express a thank you for the enthusiasm and interest that not only student government expressed, but the Interact Club and Key Club as well. I have over 42 volunteers who will start doing some programming, student programming with, and so thank you very much. I appreciate working with you.
That is terrific news. Thank you for the information. Thank you so much for being willing to come out and fill in. I know it's midterms and you've got a lot to do. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Okay. The board's next item of business is a discussion. We're going to have a mid-year report on goals in our strategic plan and where we are with that. Dr. Giarrizzo, I believe that's you.
So, we set out last year on a very ambitious journey to build a 5-year strategic plan. And so over the course of that year, last year we collected a lot of survey information. We met with a lot of constituency groups. By the end of the year, we settled on our 3 pillars around teaching and learning, equity for all learners, and social emotional learning. We then, over the summer, worked to establish additional goals that were added to the work of the strategic plan. And so the work, where I am at here tonight with the board and the community is letting you know what's going on, what work have we done, where are we going. You will see that you will not see a lot of completed tasks here. We're halfway through the year, but you will see a lot of things that are in motion and on the way. Okay. Okay. So, in the teaching and learning, in our teaching and learning goal, we set out to create a K-12 curriculum council. Everything that we're doing recently is we're including student voice in what we do. So we had students on the strategic planning committees that built the goals, that built the pillars, and now there are students who are with us giving voice to implementing the work. We're actually even having students, we have students on interview committees. Their voice is very, very important to us. Each of the pillars of the strategic plan have what are called an oversight committee, so that we established early in the year. There's a K-12 teaching and learning oversight committee. There is a K-12 equity for all learners oversight committee, and then there is a K-12 social emotional learning oversight committee. We early in the fall, we had sent out a request for those that wanted to participate on these committees. It went out to all of our parents, all of our teachers. We got about 88 people respond that they wanted to be involved in the work. There was a place for everybody. And so as a result, we have some committees that have 30, 35 people on them, which is too big to do anything in one meeting. So those are broken up into smaller subcommittees. So within each of these broad-based committees, there are smaller groups of people working on very specific things. So in regard to the curriculum council, the subcommittee is meeting in late January. They're going to report on their plan at the full teaching and learning committee on February 11th. So this is just getting started. And then the curriculum council, once it is constituted, will be solicited before the end of this year and fully constituted in the next year. We also are looking at establishing a contemporary instruction committee, including students. They'll look at innovative practice, they'll look at technologies, what is of interest to them, what will deepen their learning, how to keep them connected and interconnected to one another. And so at that committee level, this is very much in the research and development stage of where we are. The Professional Development Committee is a committee that has existed for probably 20 years. It was mandated. I remember when it was like 20, 25 years ago that it became a mandate in the regulations. And so they have been working on building programming and supports for our teachers over the course of time. We want, and Rob Klobicki has been a key person in that work. We want to reconstitute that, really take a look at the, reimagine and envision the goals of what they are seeking to do, so that it's not just about building some after-school programming and scheduling superintendent's conference. That we want the learning for our professional staff to be broad and wide and all spread throughout the year. So this year we took a look at this is a subcommittee of the Teaching and Learning Committee now. Rob went out and shook some branches and he got a whole bunch of people to sign on. We've reached out across bargaining units, so it has always been sort of primarily teachers, and that's fine. But we also have custodial staff and secretaries and administrators and aides and support staff and food service workers that we want to get their voice as well on the things that they need to learn and do. So where that committee is at is that they're compiling research of best practice to inform their work. They are looking at the 2008, they're looking at survey results to inform their work, and then the current PDP, the Professional Development Plan that gets filed with the state, that's all being, scoured and reviewed with goals to be looked at the next meeting. Some of the goals that we put in our strategic plan are very aspirational. So for example, promoting excellence within a challenging academic program by monitoring, assessing, and continually improving the teaching and learning process. How do we do that? So this list is not exhaustive, it is only exemplary, but we are putting collegial circles together for teachers at buildings. We are looking at a critical review of our electives, particularly at the middle school, so that the elective program next year will intentionally and explicitly expose kids to all 6 of the shared valued outcomes within the elective program. We are building explicit PD in metacognition. I started doing learning walks last year with all the building principals. That's time that the principal and I spend time in classrooms, not formally observing, but spending time with kids and teachers and looking at a common lens throughout the walk through the building's initiatives. This year, we added on, so those are school-based learning walks that I do. This year, we added on K-12 program-based learning walks, and these are really terrific. What we are doing is we block about 3 hours, and by area. So we've looked at so far world language. We've looked at our STEAM program. We've got one coming up in PE. We've got one coming up in special education. And so we start at an elementary school, and there are 3 throughout the year in each area, so we will get to all 3 elementary schools. We start in an elementary school. We identify a lens with which we will, study while we were there. So for example, when we looked at the modern language program, we looked at students' use of the target language, in productive conversation, right? So not the teacher talking in Spanish, but the students talking in Spanish. And so we looked at that all throughout the program. And we spend time at the elementary, time at the middle school, time at the high school, and then we debrief, and we have a sense of we get a good sense of what we saw based on what we set out to look at. Those have been very, very powerful. This year, we've also, we're implementing core practices in language learning. We're also implementing the next generation science standards. We are looking at our STEAM program. So our STEAM program is a little further along at the elementary schools, just in terms of access to assured programming, than it is in some of the other areas of the district. So we're looking to build that. And we have a task force of teachers helping us to do that. So for example, we've asked in next year's high school program that there are more electives. We've actually asked for four explicit electives in science, technology, engineering, and math that kids can choose from. Those are being developed. We are also developing our performance-based assessment, having kids work in real, authentic, challenging situations on how to solve a problem through a path of inquiry. We've identified grade 2 as an area that we can provide a short experience. So no matter what school you're at, you will have the same experience, but you'll have a lot of choice in how you get there. This year we've implemented a computer science strand in elementary STEAM. So our new hire, Ryan Bridgewood, has been doing a phenomenal job teaching kids how to code, little people in kindergarten coding, and all the way through grade 5. And Carol Smythe and our STEAM teachers have also put together in a short experience. All first graders are involved in the FIRST robotics program, all of them. We also set out to increase our rates of mastery, and we've spent a lot of time talking about this, so I won't get into a lot of the reads on this, but we in our student achievement reports, elementary, middle, high school, you saw how that is all, the activities that we're going through to study that. For those who haven't seen that, we do a critical review of all the instructional planning reports. We look at this over 1 year through 5 years when that data is available. Then we look at the gap analysis reports, and that informs our instruction. Through this, we put together a set of multi-year goals. So we have 1-year goals, we have multi-year goals, then we have some ongoing goals. So for example, researching, implementing, and assessing ways to enhance student engagement and commitment to teaching and learning. That's not something that we set out to do and check off at the end of 1 year. It's going to take us time to really do that in a systemic and systematic way. There is a subcommittee that is studying this, and they are very much in their early part of their unpacking the goals, reviewing what assessments exist, and researching what is to come next. So we'll have more information for the board at the end, in the end of the year report on this. As I said earlier, we're also looking to elicit student voice, empower students. We've got a subcommittee formed that's actively researching this, and I talked to you about the grade 2 capstone project, which will give 6 and 7-year-olds a lot of voice in how to solve a problem. As I said, we're looking to engage student voice in curriculum instruction assessment, and there are subcommittees looking at this in all 3 pillars. Research is underway to incorporate students' voice in all of that. How do we do that? We do that through surveys. We do that through our bond planning. Kids will be involved in that. We will do that through our SGOs. There aren't a lot of boards that have their SGOs at their board table with them. Every couple of weeks, so the commitment to to empowering kids to speak up is great here. We're also looking at time. This is something we've talked about. So how do we use time in each of the schools? So we have a finite amount of time allocated to the school day. How does that get used? How is it allocated? What is important in the day? So all of those master schedules are being looked at this year. Next year, we have a plan to incorporate elementary counseling into the program. We're looking to build health and wellness into the academic program. That requires us to look at how to schedule that, right, and in the special areas. We're looking at structures to support assured experiences for all students in all of the SVOs at the middle school. So right now, when you sign up for electives, you sign up for whatever you want. We want to make sure the kids are exposed to all 6 strands. They'll have a lot of choice within the strand, but they'll be working on something with problem solving, something with being a committed individual, all 6 of them. And then lastly, we spent a little bit of time talking about this when, I can't remember if it was at the guidance report or if it was when we did the high school report on student achievement, but we're looking at how we structure the day at the high school, and the extent to which a block schedule would be beneficial. So we don't know, but we have done some research on that, and we are hoping to do a week-long pilot of a block schedule in March. So that way we can come back and make some recommendations to the board on how it works. And the way a block schedule would work is you wouldn't necessarily have a 40-minute period of time every single day. You might have an hour 4 of the 6-day cycle. And so kids can have a little bit more flexibility in their days and how they schedule that out. We also spent some time talking about special ed and general ed, making sure that the two areas of programming are working in tandem with one another and not in separate silos. So there is, rather than have this be a place that rests on its own in special education, we've brought this into the teaching and learning committee, and so that the work is all happening at the same time. We're looking at our full continuum of services, ILC, ICT, resource room, speech language services, how all of that is deployed. As you know, we did a pilot in grade 1 of ICT, full day pilot. It's always been a half day teacher, half day TA for K and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 5. This year we implemented a grade 1 full day. ICT was one of the things that, as I entered into the district, was one of the themes that came up the most among teachers and parents, that to not have the teacher be there every other day. We would like to have the special ed teacher there every day. That's working super well, and we're looking to, through the budget process, to explore how to expand that from grades K to 4 next year, and then the following year expand that to grade 5. So we're looking at staffing on that. We've also spent a lot of time this year talking about, and Chris and Francine and Joe Kistinger Francine Palladino have been working on effective models of co-teaching, really training teachers on how there are 6 models of co-teaching, how they function, who's does what, and our teachers have been getting a lot of training in that. And then we've been trying to involve our students in the development of their IEPs, right? So to the extent that they are capable, I mean, so little 5, 6, 7-year-olds, it's a little trickier to do that, but certainly middle school and high school kids should have a strong voice in the development of the IEP, at the IEP meeting, and certainly there are other ways that we would engage very young people in understanding what their needs are and how we can best support them. Not necessarily at a CSE table, but certainly there are other ways to do that. This got a little small, so I apologize, but we also have a few other ongoing goals. So fostering a culture of growth, fostering a culture where growth is at the center of what we do. So that is all of our mindset work, the math journaling that we have built into the program. We had Yeep Banhar here this year. Our high school teachers were involved in that training as well. They thought it was amazing. So we're really trying to shape the math practices, not just at the elementary level and the middle level, but also at the high school as well. Productive struggle, helping kids to understand that it's okay to struggle with something, to get it wrong, to learn from a failure. That failure is really an opportunity to grow. We're incorporating innovative mindset, growing our kids' ability to innovate and grow. Rob Klabicki does a lot of co-observations with our directors and principals, so we're always looking at instruction through a double lens. I talked before about our superintendent's learning walks. We are reviewing our grading practices to make sure that our grading practices are not just about tests and quizzes and, that it's a means to an end, but also a way for us to look at process skills and a way for us to use data to grow. I talked to you about our data analysis, and then individual goal setting is a goal that's not really rooted in our DNA yet, but we would like that to be something that we work on both in the short term and long term. So thinking about kids more individually, and how in the scope of our program do we work with them, understand what they need, and find innovative ways to meet those needs. We are also looking to develop the skills and dispositions of the SVOs. So we talked about this last year and a little bit this year. So the district has spent time since 2015 really getting an understanding of what the SVOs are, getting familiar with them, putting them into the classrooms as teachers had some autonomy to do that. This last year we set out to build skills, learning progressions, and dispositions for thinkers and communicators. And so that work has been done. It took a longer than we thought it was going to take, but it is done. We have now fully trained the administrative team over the past couple of sessions. We're now, and actually as recently as today, Rob met with the elementary principals on how to bring this work and train our teachers. Simultaneously, while this rolls out, we will start to engage in the same work around problem solvers and committed individuals, and then we will turnkey that and train that work next year, and then the final 2 SVOs will be worked on in 1920 and rolled out in 2021. So we have a very clear plan on how to get this out into the world. And then lastly, we're promoting North Shore as a leader in education. We talk about, I talked about with the board, what I hear a lot about is a North Shore education, the value of a North Shore education, and that people really value it. So how do we get that out there? And we've got our teachers hosting events and attending events and becoming leaders out in the region. In our equity work, we have fewer goals in equity for all learners and social emotional learning, so we'll get you there shortly. We set out to develop leadership to address equity issues throughout the system. So, for example, The Equity Committee is meeting, researching, and preparing their recommendations on what needs to happen within the system. But we know that there were some first things that we needed to do. So, for example, the full administration was trained by a racism in the what's called their URT training, Unraveling Racism training. That happened in June of last year. We spent 2 days off site, and then we brought the full faculty together in November, and we had Erase Racism back to do a full training of the entire district staff. We'll now take that into the buildings, right? So we have a high-level overview, and there'll be a series of trainings and activities that will happen at the building level. So that work will start to narrow down into smaller groups. We've made a priority of empowering girls and women, which has been really important to us. So we have partnered with the nonprofit Girls Rising, and they've worked with our staff. They're working with our students. We've got an event planned for, I think, sometime in March, where we're doing a short experience for all of our elementaries. We're going to start bringing them together before they get to the middle school. Also scheduling sensitivity training, and then within each of these strands, we're looking to have buildings do common programming, right? That might be a little unique, but it's going to have common goals throughout the system. We've also set out to do anti-bias training, so we're doing some research on how best to do that. We're observing and visiting other programs in schools. That's going to happen in the winter and the spring. And beginning in 2019-20, we'll have anti-bias training built into our new teacher orientation as a first start, and then it will expand from there. Hiring, we've talked about this quite a bit. So we would like to recruit a more diverse workforce to the extent that we are able to. So one of the things that we are exploring is having a hiring fair with other districts, where we actually go out and actively recruit. For the assistant superintendent search, I actually did some very specific outreach. So not only did we advertise, so advertising is somewhat passive in approach. So we advertise in some publications that draw on a diverse readership. But I also did some recruiting where I sent the job posting to colleges and universities who draw towards a diverse applicant pool. And from what I can see, it made a bit of a difference. So we'll interview, and the process will move forward. I think we have a more diverse applicant pool than we may have had in the past. The development of a family liaison position. So we don't want this to be a separate hire. We want this to be support teams of people who already exist in our buildings. And so that is requiring us to think about who that might be, how they will be constituted, what they will do. And in the meantime, we've created a directory of parent resources, particularly for our E&L new parents who come to the district maybe from another country or whatnot, so they're connecting with people. Multi-year goals include looking at all those subgroups. So we are taking a very wide lens of how we're looking at subgroups. Right now, the building principals have all been tasked with looking at all the different subgroups that exist in their building, how kids perform as within them, and then there'll be specific action plans that'll get reviewed with me in probably the late winter for action. When we worked with students last year, there was a desire to make public what our equity story is. What does equity look like in North Shore? How is it operationalized? We're not quite sure what this is going to look like ultimately, but we've given this to committee, and they are, you can see in the brainstorming stage of this. The specific actions will likely not occur in this year, but perhaps in the upcoming year.
And then we have ongoing goals of promoting school environments that include support, engage, and inspire a diverse student body. So we've done some work with our E&L students. We have E&L outreach evenings. We've been making a concerted effort to translate our school documents, and we have teachers working on that. We are providing interpreters for parents when they come to back to school night and evening events as they need them. Next year in the budget, we've made provisions for a phone interpreting service. I think it's called Propio, and it will provide language translation services by phone, and I think it's over 100 languages. So part of the difficulty in written translation is it's very labor intensive, and if you don't have people who understand all the different languages, right, it's hard to do. Right, so whereas if we need to speak with somebody on the phone about a parent-teacher conference, about a report card, about something that happened on the playground, and the person is, the person speaks a language that is not Spanish or Mandarin or what, we can get that communication to them pretty easily. We're also scheduling a challenge day that's happening in March at the middle school. It's a day of bringing people together around a common vision and common ground. We've been increasing our choral repertoire so that they reflect more multicultural selections. Our 11th grade English curriculum has been modified to include more multicultural and diverse text. And one of the things that and I want to thank some of the nudging from President Jones on this, is the breakfast program. So we've expanded our breakfast program from K through 8. We started at 6 through 8. We've now expanded it to K through 5. Participation is light, but it's there. And I think if the choice of eating nothing or eating something is there, I'd rather have kids eat something. I think this is the last one. And then developing an awareness and understanding among constituencies about diversity. Not just diversity of skin color, but diversity of attitudes, of values, of beliefs, of experiences, of socioeconomics, of gender. And we are looking at exploring programming options to in special education. So we're looking at all of our special ed students. Where are they placed? Is it possible for us to have them come back to their in-district programs and be part of our community all day long? And then lastly, in the social emotional learning pillar, this and Linda Binion spoke to the board quite a bit about this at our last meeting, but we've put together our internal teams for the multidisciplinary K-12 team. The K-12 Oversight Committee has been formed, and we are in the process of doing that needs assessment. So what does the place need from a social emotional learning perspective? We just don't want to throw programs at schools for the sake of having programs. And so there is a risk assessment piece of this that has been built. The training modules are getting prepared now, and we're about to kick off Module 1 next week with staff. A referral plan is in research and development, so how will we cast a wide net within the system to know who's at risk, what do they need, and then once we know what they need and if they are at risk, what we can do to support them. This goal is about ensuring the social emotional needs of students informing all of our matters. So workload, testing, homework. This will come up in the next academic calendar development. Now that we have a calendar, we can start in the spring. We'll build all the slugs that go in there. But in special ed, the assistant principals and buildings are having weekly meetings with service providers just to make sure that there is continuity to our efforts. Linda talked about this at our last meeting last week, so research-based strategies to improve well-being. So we've implemented Mind Up curriculum at the middle school. The elementary has has a couple of different things happening across the system, but we're looking to bring some more common programming for the elementary program. So, for example, Glenwood Landing has employed the Ruler program. The others are coming along with something that's more unified. This came up a lot in our surveys last year, engaging kids in purposeful play, discovery, productive struggle. So we have a lot more work to do in this area. And so we are thinking about how to do it within the day, right? The play has to be structured. It has to be done with a purpose. And so this is one of those areas that we are trying to figure out via the schedule. Promoting a reflective school culture. Our E3 squads at the middle school are revised, doing very well. Challenge Day is coming up. The high school has put together writing center briefs for seniors where they're getting a chance to be reflective and metacognitive about the things that they are embarking upon. We've done information on IB opportunities to all English 10 classes with a specific focus towards a diverse student body. So how do we capture more kids in there who may not be outreaching for it? And then the extensive safety and security upgrades across the district have been significant, particularly this year. Additional goals, our homework task force. These were the add-ons. So as if we didn't have enough to do, we put on some more. Our homework task force is very, very busy. They have reviewed all of the research to inform their thoughts. That is ready to go. They have constructed surveys. They are in the process of being edited as we speak. And then they will work towards developing policies and practices for consistent homework across the schools. And they are coming to the board, I think, in March or April to present their findings. The K-12 audit in literacy that we put out an RFP for service for those services. Those are out. I think they're starting to come back. They'll be evaluated. We'll bring them to the board with a recommendation. The counseling action plans we talked about last week. So you saw from that original survey, a lot of that work is done, and now we have a whole nother set of points of progress with which to work towards. Our Chromebooks, Elliot Kay did a survey of all of the faculty and staff on the use of the G Suite, how we're using it, to what's the level of sophistication, how do we need to move this along for you, and we'll be doing the same kind of survey for students. And then lastly, this evidence-based practices, this is assigned to subcommittee to unpack because we need some common understanding of that. That's been given to the teaching and learning subcommittee of the oversight committee. Okay. Pre-bond, I've talked about this quite a bit. So our architects have assessed all the sites. They've toured the buildings with our principals. We've identified all the specific infrastructure needs through the buildings conditions survey. All of the priority 1 items have been identified in infrastructure, instructional space, health and wellness, safety, security. We're also looking at an energy performance contract to coexist with anything that we do. And within the next, actually on Tuesday, we'll be sending out a survey instrument that I talked about before. Community members, parents, staff, students. That launches on the 29th. It's open for about 10 days. We'll then simultaneously do some community focus groups led by our architects. We will then bring all this back to the full board for review on February 28th, and then engage our bond advisory committee to work after that. And I actually think this is the very last thing, is the policy review. So we set out to do policy work in the 4,000 goals, the 4,000s, which are all of the instructional program, and the 5,000 policies, which are the have to do with students. And so I know that Trustee Madden is going to update the board on where we are tonight, so I'm not going to give away his report. But we are expecting to be completed with the 4,000s by January 31st, and the 5,000s by May 2. Okay, and we also, and NISBO is also involved in that contract service as well. So we've been busy.
No doubt. Thank you for the report, for
problem.
the
See you.
thoroughness with which you went through all of those things. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I appreciate, of course, the efforts on breakfast. We do have students entitled to and in need of free lunch, and with the breakfast program, we extend what we're able to provide those students with, which I think is an important equity goal.
I agree.
I don't doubt that my colleagues have questions and comments. I'll look this way first. Anyone wish to question or comment?
Nope.
I look away. By all means, Trustee Ledmer.
And encouraging the level of student involvement, I think, is so critical to our success.
Thank you.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's very thorough. I see all of our goals are on there. You're making progress. A lot of work has been done, which is great. One that you mentioned was homework, and it sounds like it's going to be a great report. Looking forward to it. A lot of the surveys and the research, you mentioned a lot of internal things we're discussing to what we're doing. I'm sure you're doing this, but I will just mention, of course, looking externally, and it really overlaps with a lot of the other areas. We're looking in terms of best practices, in terms of contemporary learning models. I think that was a big part of it, to make sure that we're certainly understanding what we're doing, but also how that fits into what we should be doing, which I'm sure is a huge part of it, but
Totally.
I thought I would mention it.
Other comments? Everybody good? And I'll second Dave's comment that from our earlier discussions, I think what a lot of us are hoping to see is, where the data and the research that exists is really supporting
Mm-hmm.
the decisions and the processes and where we're looking to move forward. Everyone's good?
Great. Thank you very much. I
No,
appreciate
thank
the
you.
support.
The next item on our agenda is comments from the public. Periodically, we just like to remind everybody, in New York State, school boards, like other villages and towns, are required to hold their meetings in public. And primarily, the school board is meeting here tonight because we need to execute our responsibilities under the law, and we're required to do so in public, which is not quite the same as meeting with the public. But nonetheless, it's always been important to this board, both in policy and in practice, and I think, no doubt, philosophy, that even though it's not required, that we always set aside time for public comment, and typically we set aside 2 opportunities for public comment. The result of which is we will all absolutely hear and listen to any of the comments that the community wants to bring to us, and we appreciate your time and effort in doing so. It may not necessarily lend itself to the back and forth that some people would prefer, but it's the forum that we have. And in case anyone forgot to bring their copy of board policy with them, the quick reminders are, we ask that you come to the podium, that you address the board, that you give us your name and your town of residence, and if you would kindly remain your polite and considerate selves that you normally are. With that, I will open it up to public comment if anyone has anything they wish to share. Absolutely, yes.
Grant Kletter from Seacliff. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. At the last board meeting I spoke, as well as a few other individuals, regarding removing elections from our schools. Since that time, we have circulated a petition to show this board that there are more than just a handful you have heard from that find this issue important. In addition, since that meeting, the New York State Legislature has approved legislation that will require early voting throughout the state. This will require that in-person elections be held for an additional 10 days. The Nassau County Board of Elections will have full authority to select the locations for those elections. This is the same Board of Elections that said this district is fine with elections being held in their schools. At the last board meeting, Dr. Giarrizzo stated that this board did not have the ability to move the school board and budget vote out of the schools. However, the education law referenced by Dr. Giarrizzo states that, in quotes, "The annual meeting and election shall be held at such place as the trustees or Board of Education or clerk shall designate." Furthermore, the following school districts have at least one, although some have all, polling locations for their school board and budget elections outside of their schools: Herricks, Hewlett-Woodmere, Lawrence, Locust Valley, Long Beach, New Hyde Park, Sayville, West Babylon. And there may be more. How are they able to move their elections, but we are not? In short, I am asking the following. Can the board give a direct answer as to whether you believe elections should remain in our schools and whether you're willing to remove them, starting with this year's board and budget vote? After a year of advocating for this change, I believe we deserve, at the very least, that the board take a position on this issue at this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I will add, we're going to let everyone who wishes to comment in public comment fully. If need be, at the conclusion of public comment, I can make a motion to move old business up for the purposes of, at our last discussion on elections in schools, the trustees and the board as a whole didn't have an opportunity to have that conversation, as it wasn't on the agenda. So I can make the motion to do that, and if the motion passes, the board can go ahead and have more of a discussion then. But we'll finish public comment before we entertain that.
Jerry Romano, Seacliff. I get the impression that voting in schools is a safety issue. Is that what it's all about? Is that what the concerns are? So then having anybody in the schools other than the students is a safety issue. So you shouldn't allow anybody in the schools for graduation, for a play, for a sporting event, anything, if you're going to go down that road. I don't think elections should be in school either, but I'm just saying, if it's a safety issue, deal with the safety issue and eliminate everything. Otherwise, taking voting out of the school doesn't solve any problems. All right? I just strolled in here tonight. Nobody stopped me. I could have been anybody. So, anyway, thanks for putting the Capital Reserve Fund, not the Capital Reserve Fund, the Cash Reserve Fund online. My first question is, the Workers' Compensation Reserve, you have about $2 million. I'll round off the numbers. I'm not going to the last cent. You have about $2 million in Workers' Compensation Reserve. Manhasset has $400,000. They have 25% more students. How were they able to do that? I'm waiting for an answer.
Are you finished with your remarks?
Yeah, no, that's
Is
one
that the end
question.
of
No, I
your
have a whole
remarks?
bunch. Oh, you want me to roll through? I'll roll through them, and you can answer them all at once. That's fine. Okay. You have an unemployment reserve where you self-insure with unemployment. You have almost $1.6 million in cash of hours. Okay. Manhasset pays $20,000 a year in unemployment insurance. It would take a lot of years to get to $1.5 million at $20,000 a year. Like, probably everybody in this room will be retired by then. Okay. Next. Did that one. There's a employee benefit accrued liability reserve of $333,000. Why is that? And this is for vacations for secretaries primarily. Why are you accruing hundreds of thousands of dollars of our money for vacations for secretaries? Okay, you can, and that's come back to the why. I think I'm almost done with these questions. Oh, so on the capital reserve, $8.5 million. it says Phase 1 projects, $3.4 million, and it lists all these air conditionings and other things that were done. Who determined why we needed air conditioning? Where's the justification for that? Because the schools are closed in the summer in the hottest months. Like how many, I mean, somebody must have said, well, we have, you know, a significant amount of time where we need air conditioning, so we're going to spend this community's money on it. There's a really good reason for that, right? Somebody thought this through. Okay? But those are my questions for now. You're on Facebook Live, by the way, going out to the community.
Thank you. Oh, wait, hold on. I do have something for you.
Good.
Because we've addressed, I think as you know, we've addressed the issue with our difference between our spending and Manhasset's before.
Right. Actually, you haven't. You've never told me why.
No, we
You've
did.
told me what?
So the last video we sent indicated the dates and times that we had discussed the difference between Manhasset spending and North Shore spending. And then we followed up in the email that we sent to you with the test scores between North Shore and Manhasset.
Okay.
And we gave you the reference for where the audit details were. And then we came back at the additional meeting and we discussed the reserve details extensively. But
I'm asking you why. I'm not asking you what. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying, why does a school district that's 15 minutes from here, just a few miles.
Mr. Romano, do you want me to respond? I'm going to
Yeah,
respond.
I do, but you're not telling me why. You're telling me what again?
We've used the public's time on 2 occasions in public. That's for Mr. Romano to remind him, if you'd pass that to him, so that if he or anyone else wishes to review the video or the minutes from October 12th, from April 27th, and there's an additional date here, they're welcome to do so, that we've discussed, and we discussed both what the differences in spending were, and we discussed why those were occurring. We then provided you with test scores. But further, the last time you were at public comment, we also discussed, which was not the last meeting, I think, but the one before, we also discussed the state controller's fiscal stress scores for Manhasset. And we talked about how he had noted that their reserves were too low, as evidenced by the fact that their short-term borrowing was too high, and that cost them points
How
on
low
that
are they? I'm
stress score.
curious. What
It's online. I didn't bring it with me because we
Well, because
discussed
they have
it.
25% more students, and you have 300% more cash reserves.
Since we discussed it last time, I didn't bring it back to this meeting with me again. It is online. It's the
No,
state
but I mean,
controllers.
I'm here now. I left at the last meeting at 9:45 because I didn't think it was reasonable for the members of the public, the people you represent. You don't work for the school. You don't work for the teachers. You don't work for all the employees.
We
you,
don't. We
you work for
volunteer.
you work for the community.
We volunteer
I'm here
for the
now, and I had
community.
to leave last time because it was 9:45, and I'm lights out at 10 o'clock. Okay, I'm here now. I'm asking you why. I'm asking you why you have 300% more cash, and Manhasset has 25% more students. Something does. You know what? Something. You know what? It walks like a duck, talks like a duck.
I'll answer when you want.
Yeah, no, but it walks like a duck,
me
talks
a
like a
support.
duck. There's usually a really good reason. Something doesn't
Like,
make
wave your
sense.
hand or something when I
Something doesn't make sense, and you're not able to answer me.
I'm happy to, but
I'm waiting. I'm here. I'm now. I keep asking these questions. Why? Not what. Why? Like, for instance, here, I'll ask you why again. Who are you?
I'm the attorney for the board.
Okay.
The only way they can answer them is if you'll stop and let them answer them.
Go ahead. Answer. Answer why.
with the reserve specifically, the why is because of the significant long-term liabilities that this school district and every other school district has. We have made specific decisions with regard to those reserves because of those long-term liabilities. Our fiscal stress score is reflected by the state controller scores, supports the decisions that we've made, and they're reflected in our short-term borrowing. They are not reflected to the same degree when the state controller looks at Manhasset's fiscal stress. They are absolutely entitled to make different decisions and what's best for their district, and these are the decisions we've made here. You asked specifically about the capital reserves and the air conditioning and who made those decisions. I'm frankly surprised that you're asking. I know that you're a voter, and I know that you saw that in the capital reserve fund that we all voted on in the past 2 years to approve the fund and to approve the expenditures
Where's the
on it
justification?
with the voters, who we appreciate.
No, where's the business case, the justification for spending the money?
The case for all the expenditures in the capital reserve fund were made in the previous 2 years. I do not have to recount them for you here and now on the spot.
Why not? Who do you work for? I thought you worked for me.
Again, I
You don't
volunteer
work for me,
the
the community.
community.
I'm the community.
thanks
You
to
know, I'm
their
one voice, but there are a lot of people
gracious
who feel the way I do.
voting. These are my answers.
You don't want to answer the question. You don't,
I would not agree.
because you don't have the answer. I'm here now. What's the justification? I'm asking, what's the justification for $330,000 in reserve cash for, what was that called? I can't hear you.
Employee benefit.
Yeah, why is there why are you accruing vacation
These-
time and other stuff?
Well, because they are in fact actual monetary long-term obligations as reflected by our contracts. and
We're
as
paying
reflected
people
by
not
the
to take
audits.
vacation?
You could,
I don't
I
understand.
think you're going to want to take a look at the audit report. We talked about this, not the last time
No,
you were in
wait, let me
public
hang on this for a
comment,
second.
but the time
$333,000.
I showed you where you could find the audit report online.
$333,000 in cash accrued for vacation time. What is that?
I've given you 6 answers at this point.
No, I'm asking you what it's for. Who gets it? Are we paying people not to take vacation? We're paying secretaries not to take vacation, correct? Your lips aren't moving. You know, this is really going nowhere. You show a lot of disrespect towards this community. We're paying an awful lot of money for these schools, more than we should be, more than the surrounding community, and you don't think you have to answer to anybody. What kind of crap is that?
Mr. Romano, I just handed you the email where I showed you the times and
I
dates
read your email. It doesn't tell me why.
where we had answered you on every single occasion.
You haven't. That's why, if you had, I wouldn't come back. Do you think I want to be here on a weeknight? I'm tired. I worked all day.
As did we all.
I got to tell you, this is going nowhere, okay? All right? But I'm glad the people in this community got to see what you're like, all right? And they'll all see it tomorrow when they all wake up on Facebook. Good night.
Good night. Public comment is still open. You're welcome to address the board. It's all good.
How you doing?
Good. You?
Justin Kletter, Seacliff. Wanted to thank Dr. Giarizzo for going through the strategic plan. I don't know if you guys can go back and forth, but I definitely want a copy of the presentation. I thought it was great, and I was glad that you included a lot of the special education programs that are in there. They're very near and dear to my heart. I just wanted to make one comment about it, and obviously that is when you use inclusion, support, engagement, inspire. I hope that you include those special education students in all assets of the program and not just, you know, the ICT or wherever they are. I think they're there with a voice, and they're very important to the district, and I think that's something that, you know, I would love to be involved in any part of that with you as well. So, all right, that's all I have.
Thank you.
One thing?
Oh, I'm sorry,
So the
please.
presentation will go up on the website tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, as promised, I am going to make a motion to move old business up to our next item on the agenda. My goal for doing so is to give the entire board an opportunity to discuss the issue of elections in our schools. I believe I'm motioning to move old business up in its entirety. If someone wishes to so amend, so be it. But do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any further, do you guys have any discussion of the motion or questions? All right, all in favor? All right, we're moving old business up. And I will suggest that we discuss, I'd like to bring up the issue of elections in schools, as it's clearly a concern of the community, and I would like to hear my fellow trustees' thoughts on this, since we haven't had an opportunity for that previously. Does anyone have something they want to share?
I'll share.
Tim, please.
And right now, I'm speaking specifically about the budget vote and the school board election and any other election that is a district election, bond vote, any of those types of elections. I do not favor moving them out of the school, in particular out of this school. I disagree with the point that's been made in the petition that I've seen, and also by Mr. Kletter, that it undermines the safety of students. I believe that that area of the building is so isolated and separate from the academic area that is largely shut off. I do disagree with some of the points in the petition that that one, just to quote, that no one can legally be prevented from entering the building during school hours on those days. I don't believe that applies in this particular case for the budget vote. You can't enter this part of the building during the school day on election day without going through what any other visitor would have to do on any other day. The petition states the locations within the building are not securely separated from the rest of the building. To my point that I just made, I do believe that it is. I'm not sure, and am I able to ask Mr. Kletter a question at this point? Is that about the curtain? Maybe somebody, I'm assuming that's referring to the vote here in this building. I'm not sure what that's a reference to with the curtain, because I haven't seen a curtain, and it's a wall that extends from the floor to the ceiling that serves as a divider. If it's a reference to this building, I don't know if it's this.
I thought it was
if that's
possibly Seacliff. We can have a back and forth, but I'm just sort of looking for. I think they might be referring to
But
Seacliff because the
it's
gym's divided for the vote.
in Seacliff?
During the general elections, they use part of the gym. It's
Okay.
Seacliff.
Okay, I'm not, okay.
So, and it's.
I didn't know, I'm
there's
not
a
sure what
divider
that
of
was
some kind.
referring to. But I also, another point that I would make is that the language of the law is that it's accessible and adequate, and I would even go so far as to say it's desirable to hold an election in a school building, as long as it is in a secure location like it is here. I think the schools in the community are one and the same. I don't think that I want to see the connection between the community and the schools fostered and strengthened, and I don't want that connection to be walled off. I want the community here for plays. I want them here for musicals. I want them here for sporting events and homecoming and the film festival that we just had recently. And I would never, ever support those sorts of activities being closed off to the community. And I would argue that they're safe in those activities, but there's far more exposure in those activities, certainly than during an election. I've been to many sports games on afternoon in September or in April, where you have hundreds of kids playing different sports, hundreds of community members and spectators at those events. And I think that's very important. And I think elections are part of that connection between the community and the schools. And I think it's good for students to see that connection as well. Okay, it's not just about the community having access to the schools, but the students having access to the community. And lastly, my last point would be that I think it would have the effect of disenfranchising voters, especially if it were done for this upcoming election. It would cause significant confusion, and I think there would be people who wouldn't be casting votes who normally would be casting votes. So that's my view.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate your perspective. Other trustees?
I'd like to add, I want to thank my colleague trustee for putting together an incredibly thoughtful and well-researched and heartfelt thought on this process. It does seem counterintuitive that with all of the activity that we've done and the work we've done to create an extremely secure school building over a very short period of time, that one would think, well, we're just going to invite more strangers in. But that being said, we have done a lot of work to create a very secure space and identify gaps in our security in this school building. So I too believe that it's an appropriate spot to have our community vote. I agree wholeheartedly with Tim's thoughts on local education and the connections that we make to our community members, the families, the students, our seniors, taxpayers. So at this point, I also agree with my colleague to keep the budget vote and any other school-based decision-making vote in the high school gym. I think it's an appropriate spot, and I think it's very secure.
Thank you. And to your point, I do worry with the petition that we might have a disconnect with the community, so that somehow we're unconcerned about the security in the issue. So even prior to the petition, I think this is what you're alluding to, that we've been working for months on how to make elections secure. We've changed the calendar, we've hired security, we've changed dismissal procedures, we've looked at the state laws, we've consulted the attorneys about what the law means exactly and the definitions of all the words in the laws. And we started working on the legislation that's still ongoing at the state level that would finally give us, any leeway with the County Board of Elections to talk about what is safe and secure and what's not. Because we have talked with the county before, we've gotten nowhere, and that makes sense because the law says very clearly that they can put it in a public school, and when it's in a public school, we need to provide them with space closest to the most convenient, accessible access. So, is there more to do? Right? Are there other things? But I do want to be clear with the community, to your point, that we have been working very hard on this for a long time and have had conversations about if we need to do this, what's the safest, most secure way to do it. And we've got a lot of parental energy around this, and I'm hoping that we can use it to get the tools we really need. Like, we're easy to approach, but I don't feel we have the tools we need. And I think Tim and Lisa make excellent points, but if we felt there were a security issue on other elections, we don't have a lot of room to move on those, and we need it, and we need to direct that energy to where we can get that, because we all have skin in this. I have children in multiple buildings impacted by these laws. This is not something that we take lightly. But Dave, I think I should let you speak.
Well, no, I appreciate that. I think my colleagues have spoken very well on this issue. A couple points that I think weren't made that I'd like to add. 2 years ago, we started being closed on Election Day, which was this past year we started being closed on Election Day, which is a big year. We are now closed as a district on next year's election. Again, I think it shows the priority. Next year's election is as off a year as elections get, but we're still closed. There are things that we can do. With regard to the petition and with regard to the discussion in the community, I think it is important just to say very clearly that we only control our budget and trustee and the votes that are for the district. The Nassau County Board of Elections is in charge of the location for all of those, and there are laws in place. I understand that other districts have taken a position on that. We did also take the step of consulting our attorneys about that. They gave us very clear advice, and I think it would be fair to ignore our attorney's advice if we felt that it was something egregiously wrong. But I think that it takes a lot to overstep that, and I think that, as the trustees have also said, this is a difficult issue. We feel that we've taken steps to make the kids as safe as possible in the elections that we control, and so I think disregarding our attorney's advice to go in that direction is a very big step. One other thing that we have done, which wasn't mentioned, is we've tasked LAC with this, and we spent a lot of time at our LAC meeting this week talking about legislation, talking about working with the other districts through our Super LAC committee to try to bring weight to bear on the larger issue of education, of elections in schools that are controlled by the boards of election, to try to get some more clout. I do feel personally like this is yet another time that I'm sitting up here and an outside organization, in this case the Board of Elections, is saying, we can't do anything, it's about you and your community. For me, it's reminiscent of New York American Water, where they're charging these rates and it's the school district's fault. And people come after the school district and blame the school district until it's determined that, no, they actually have inappropriate, I think is a safe word to use, practices that they're now in trouble with. But first, we've had people coming after the schools, and not something I'm comfortable with, are people who have good intentions and want safety for all the kids, as we do, can be directed to come against the schools to some degree, or come at the schools first, when really this is a larger issue I see with the Board of Elections. Our election is in the one facility that is, as Tim well said, locked off from the rest of the community. Even for a sporting event the other night, I was here for a basketball game, and I had a meeting over here, and I couldn't get through. It's locked off, it's closed off, and that's a unique area within our district that we can have that. So to make the argument that it is not accessible or not appropriate is a long one for me. The final thing I'll say is, obviously this is not, you asked to hear what the board had said, and you've heard from some of us so far, but I hope that at some level, the fact that we're talking about this and open to this and reading the petition and talking to other people about it is evidence that we're not blowing this off, that we do take this seriously and understand where you're coming from, and it's risen to a level of importance to us too, to at least think about and talk about. So,
Joanna, you good? This way? You're good?
No need to repeat what others have said.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. I think that the schools is something to the community, and that the thought of removing the action of voting from the schools makes me very uncomfortable. I'm very comfortable that we are able to secure the area. I appreciate your concerns. I was an athletics director most of my life, and responsible for hundreds and hundreds of children outside of a school building. Like this, so I appreciate your concerns, but I think in this instance, we are able to focus our security and really make that as safe as it can possibly be.
I want to point out something to the trustees. The voting legislation that passed there was a lot of really interesting stuff in the voting legislation. And early voting is widely considered to be an important point of access. So I did read that legislation, and it appears that the County Board of Elections will designate up to 7 polling places for the entire county for the early voting. So by no means are all polling places going to be for early voting. And the other thing that I'll point out is the criteria that's listed there is things like being accessible to as many voters as possible. Is it near mass transit? Is it near how people commute to work? So I think we have some hope there. And I think the good news in the legislation is for voters, first and foremost, but also for us, is that the state and the federal primaries will now be held on the same day. So we have just lost another day that our schools are, that we need to deal with the issues of voting in our schools. So I thought, I'll take it, is what I'm saying. That's all, just point of
But
information.
I do think there's a difference between our election in the high school and the Board of Elections designating elementary schools.
Absolutely.
Where
I
they
think we all
do not
do.
have the same sort of segregation that we have at the high school. And especially with the early voting coming in. I mean, there's almost nothing here close to mass transit, so I mean, that doesn't really
I'll
help
be
us.
stunned if it's here, but,
I mean,
will
we're in
complain.
Petticoat Junction, but I think I think having elections in elementary schools and middle schools is something that is very worth our while looking into how we can change that. I
we
really
voted
feel
unanimously
strongly.
to
Yeah,
send
I mean,
that to
it is
LAC.
very counterintuitive to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on security and then have elections in an elementary school while gym class is going on the other side. It just doesn't make any sense to me. As a parent or as a fiduciary for the community, it doesn't.
And I mean, I think part of that is the way our actual schools are set up, but the entire board agreed with that and asked LAC to help us get the legislation passed
Right.
that would help us work on that.
I just wanted to make clear.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And we can use we can use everyone's help with.
Absolutely.
Because that legislation is pending. There's actually a huge amount of legislation pending on the issue now. I just looked again.
There was a
On the
NISBA
Senate's
article on
website.
it not that long ago.
There was, and the Senate's website has a lot of legislation there too.
And I don't want to preempt our discussion, although we're in old business now, of LAC, but in LAC, which is the Legislative Action Committee, which discusses these issues, there was really a lot of overlap with the conversation of unfunded mandates, that we're being asked to hold these elections. It interrupts our school days, it interrupts our safety procedures, certainly, to try to do our best to accommodate them, and it costs money for these things.
The other security costs money.
Could I just add one thing for us to think about, and maybe for the administration to think about, is on our budget vote day, and I know there's some residents who have come before us in public comment to mention that, especially last year is a prime example, that our parking lot was very full, and we are holding concurrent events on that day. So, you know, maybe those are events, and again, you know, those are important to us. I would agree with Tim and all of us that they were, I think, student recognitions and awards that day. There was, I think, a STEM thing. There was a read aloud for incoming. Maybe we could schedule those on a different day. So it gives our residents the flexibility to be able to access the polling place on that day with little issue, with more ease. And if you remember that day, we had a huge thunderstorm at the end of the day.
Oh,
And,
yes.
you know, people were turning around and leaving, and we don't want that to happen. They're coming from the train, they're tired, they want to get in. And many people, they will do it. They're performing their service. They'll park in Guam, as they call it, or all the way over in the teacher's parking lot, but it was full with parents and loved ones to participate in those extracurricular things. I think they lasted from like 3 until 8:30 or so, the awards day, the awards evening. So we may want to rethink that. The high school administrators and whomever are responsible, who put those great events together. So just a thought.
It also gives us more area to secure and cover.
Yes.
So, I mean, when you have things going on in the auditorium and things going on in the
yeah.
cafeteria, you have more people wandering. You have a much larger area to think about security than if you just had the budget vote.
I don't doubt scheduling is very difficult. There are a tremendous number of events that take place at the high school throughout the spring. But I think regardless, we can make sure there's a large section of parking that we,
Well,
from
that's
from the
absolutely-
beginning, first thing
yes.
in the morning, that no one parks in, faculty, staff, anybody does not park
Mm-hmm.
in. And that we mark that it is not just voter parking, but that it is 15-minute parking.
Mm-hmm.
Because has anyone ever needed more than 15 minutes to vote on the budget vote? I'll get you a trophy if ever that's happened. Right? Well, okay, yes, if you want to chat. But if we're clear, then that's 15-minute parking, and we have people out there to monitor that, be consistent with that. I think we can get back to where we were even just a couple of years ago,
agree.
where I know I was posting pictures on Facebook of just vast swaths of parking and saying, come on down.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
agree.
You're going to
You're
be in and
absolutely
out
right
in 10
about that.
minutes.
Yes.
Chief, you had an expectant look, but no. Okay, anything, do you guys, I'm so sorry. Any other comments on elections? All right. We're still in old business.
Old
Um,
business?
Yes, and that will also, we've also bulleted the PSAT discussion for old
Oh,
business.
okay, go ahead.
So since we moved old business up, we now have to get through, no, I'm
Okay.
not saying it has to be next. Please, you can do old business, whatever you have.
No, I was just going to comment on the guidance review last week, or last meeting, I'm sorry. And I think it could be enhanced by giving some more statistical data to the public. There were some members of the public who approached me on those issues. I think sometimes when people hear guidance and counseling review, they're maybe confusing it with the reviews of student achievement, and I'm not suggesting we should redo that again under guidance and counseling, but perhaps we could give some more data on college admissions and things of that nature, more statistical data on that, if possible.
Mary,
I just have a
thoughts, you have
question.
yeah, please.
So, if you want to get me some specific questions that people have asked you that would help direct that would be helpful. Or if you want to have them reach out to me directly, I'll take emails or phone calls and make sure those questions get answered.
That'd be great, because I know there's some confusion about the college admissions.
Great.
So,
Yeah, let's get that cleaned up then, for sure.
Do you guys have other old business before, I think we're putting Rob on? Rob will discuss the PSA too?
He's going to derive that, yeah.
Rob, would you like to discuss the PSA too?
Right. So this came up, I feel badly, this came up a long time ago. We said we were going to get right to it, and then it kept getting,
We had to bump it from the last meeting when it got too late.
exactly.
And so other people were going to present, so it's going to now fall to Rob to discuss giving the PSAT during the school day.
Right. I
to our
think
students.
all the trustees have seen the memo from Dr. Giarrizzo, I'm sorry, from Mr. Cousins to Dr. Giarrizzo about the benefits and the challenges to having the PSATs given during the school day to both sophomores and juniors. And I know that the trustees have asked questions to which Mr. Cousins has given answers. So maybe one of the best ways to do this, if you want, is to see if there are any further questions that you have as a result of the responses that Mr. Cousins gave that we could respond to. Maybe start there.
So originally, when this came to the board, we were asked to look at the pros and the cons and then think through a recommendation. And so we did that. And at the end of that process, we had the initial recommendation of the high school was perhaps that we can go back to the Saturday administration of the exam. And so then giving some more time to think that through, and the board posed some really good questions to us about participation, about cost, when we dug into those things, it became more clear to us that perhaps we should not go back to the Saturday. Moving back to the Saturday doesn't assure an outcome or assure participation for any on the grade level, just those who go. It leaves the participation to a little bit of happenstance, even though many kids will take it. It actually would cost us more money to administer on a Saturday by the time we got done with all the proctoring, even though we get some of that reimbursed. And then lastly, when we thought through programming, because that's really the loss of instructional time is really the key thing that sticks with us, right? So if we are talking about grades 9 through 12, and are there things that we can do for seniors and for freshmen, because there are very few days during the year, if any, right, where we have an opportunity to have an open day to do robust programming with them that's not in a scheduling based way, right? Admittedly, in the past couple of years, the programming has not been as strong as we would like it to be. It has not been as long as we would like it to be. And so what we would like to be able to do moving forward is have an opportunity to work with freshmen and seniors on. I don't have the ideas. I know you've been doing some brainstorming with people. I'm going to let you get to that in a second. But we have some general thoughts about some of the better programming that we can do for kids. So we might be able to use that day not as a lost instructional day, but as an opportunity to do something different and innovative and constructive with kids. So does that tee it up from the right way for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I could
That's
have summed
okay.
that up as well. I didn't know if the board had read through those suggestions, but just to re-echo what Dr. Giarrizzo said, the administration at the high school looked at this from two angles. One was from the cost perspective, and Dr. Giarrizzo spoke to that. And the other one was from the loss of instructional time by having that exam in the school day. What benefit is there to the 9th and the 12th graders whose instructional time is interrupted because the teachers are proctoring these exams for the 10th and 11th graders? Mr. Cousins has looked at this, the programming for the 9th and 12th graders with a wider lens and involving more people and what can be done on that day. And as Dr. Giarrizzo said, in the past, probably, although many great efforts have been made to do something beneficial to those days, there could have been more added to that. So he brought together a lot of minds around this topic and saw what could we do, what are some potential things that they're thinking of on those days. In speaking with Mr. Cousins, one of the things that they wanted to look at was what are some occurrences during the school year where we actually interrupt instruction for various things that we want to bring to students, that are important to bring to students, but that we end up interrupting even more of the school year because of these programs. So he is looking at a wide range of things that we do with students during the school year that could be brought into this day, accomplish the goals of providing those opportunities for students, but providing them on that particular day. Presentations about Megan's Law was something that we do every year with students, and we actually interrupt classes to do that. So why not use this particular day to speak with students about that? There are particular instances where he was talking to me today about this, where we provide students with information of things that they need to do, particularly when it comes to the college planning roles and things that students should be thinking about as early as 9th grade. And we tell students what needs to be done, but we don't provide the forum or the support in which the students can do that. So the guidance counselors, or Linda Binion has been talking about, why don't we use that day specifically with 9th graders, things that we leave them to do on their own, where we can program that during that school, during that day, that we can ensure that at the end of the day, students have those things accomplished, and they have them accomplished with the support of people here in the building to do that. One of the things we talked about too with seniors, for example, was hosting workshops throughout the day, getting them ready for the transition to their college life. One of the things that they talked about was providing workshops, for example, things that they will be encountering and focusing on in college, issues about date rape, you know, things that they need to be thinking about financing themselves when they go to college, offering programs and workshops of that sort. So they're putting together their heads and a lot of brainstorming going on as to how better to use those days for both the 9th graders and the 12th graders. So that time is not time that is lost or thrown away, and not only with somewhat beneficial things, but truly beneficial things to the students, and how we can capture time throughout the school year by using this day in meaningful ways so that we don't interrupt other days during the school year.
Thank you. I thought that was really interesting. Do you guys have other, it's your opportunity, questions, comments?
Just really quickly, in Albert's report, he said that it dramatically increased the number of students taking the test. I think from the equity perspective and thinking about first-generation college students and people that don't know the process, there is that tangible benefit to having those kids, you know, put right in front of them. So in a way that they might not get that a lot of other kids have. And so we talk about equity, we talk about students who are maybe not, you know, aware of this process as much. I certainly think having it during the week assists that. And certainly if it dramatically increases the number of students taking it, theoretically that's a net that they can catch all.
Yeah, Dave, to that point, one of the pieces that Albert feels is the greatest benefit of bringing this into the school day is that it has really raised awareness of students of thinking about, I really need to start thinking about this, you know, for my future. I need to be thinking about what do I need to do do better on these exams in the future? What are some opportunities that I have that the school provides where I can, you know, improve my, you know, test scores for college admissions? What are some things I need to think about if I'm thinking about going to college? Whereas if this was left up to the students to do on the weekend, many, probably most would think about, but there's still that group of students who may not give thought to that. And so it really is an equity issue.
Yeah, well, the ones who would be least likely to think about it would probably be the ones least likely to come out on a Saturday.
And to give some percentages, I spoke to him today about that matter of when you say dramatically increase, what is that increase? And he said it was, what they were able to analyze was it was between 15 to 18% more students, even accounting for those students who are absent on that day, that the increase was 15 to 18% more students taking advantage of taking the PSAT.
That's great.
Thank
Other
you.
comments?
Yeah, thank you for considering our questions. I
No,
really,
absolutely.
I personally
Thank you.
really
Well,
appreciate
thank you
pleasure.
for offering, you know, your questions, because it got us to think more deeply about this, so I appreciate that.
I think the equity component, I think that was my first
I-
thought.
I agree.
And if it's, what, 10% of 2 grades, that could be up to 40 students that we'd be losing or more.
Absolutely.
On those days. I think we also have to think about what's our purpose of at least offering the PSAT to 10th graders as well. So if we take that data from that, what do we do with that data? And what programs do we start to develop to not necessarily have the kids ace the next PSAT, but it gives them these kind of non-pressure opportunities to take that test and wrap their brains around it. And guess what? Some children, some students, the SAT is not for them. The ACT is a better assessment for certain students. So yeah, so it gives them an indication like, or where they can improve. And it's a no stress, no pressure situation in 10th grade, so it's good to offer that.
Right.
In terms of programming, I almost think of it like, wow, the teachers get a superintendent's conference day. And the last one I learned was very, very interesting in that many colleagues put together programs and workshops for other colleagues on interesting topics. And I thought that was really cool. And wouldn't it be neat if students could have that in
That's a
areas
great
that we think is
suggestion.
important?
Yeah.
You know, we're always looking for additional time to instruct our children on social emotional safety, on risk prevention for substance use and abuse, and it's an opportune day. And they don't just have to sit, listen to one person for 5 hours. They can roam around a little bit in that section of the building and have some freedoms and maybe some freedom of choice. It's an opportunity.
And I like the suggestion too, vis-a-vis our strategic plan about giving students voice, an opportunity for that. That's a
Yeah.
great idea.
So thank you for considering
You're
our,
welcome.
our thoughts.
Okay. I think one of us has some time constraints, so at least one of us. If you guys are good with the old business, I'm going to move through the, business section of the agenda. Everybody good? Okay. Action B is on personnel. Do I have a motion? No second? All in favor? Action item C, the much anticipated approval of the 2019-2020 school calendar. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second? All in favor? Dr. Giarrizza, release the calendar.
We're on it.
We get emails about this. Action item D, approval of our spring community education instructors. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Action item.
We get a vote.
Oh, God, sorry. Oh,
I'm just gonna stand here.
that's all
in
good.
favor.
Okay, all in favor. Thank you. I appreciate it. Action, I'm going to group but enunciate action items E, F, G, and H, which are donations. E, we're accepting a donation from the middle school PTSO for $7,150 for the middle school's Challenge Day. F is a donation from the Kiwanis of $500 to our Life Skills Program and $1,300 to the Key Club. G is the acceptance of a donation from the Women's Club to the North Shore High School Cheerleading Club of $300, and H is the donation from Allied Maker to the Robotics Club, a Grizzly Industrial milling and drilling machine for wood metal fabrication worth $2,269, and a precision metal lathe worth almost $3,000. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have comments, accolades, or thank yous
Thank you.
from
Thank
the
you.
board? All in favor? Heartfelt thanks to all of those groups. Action item I is the approval between North Shore and the organization called Challenge Day, which will run that middle school group. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Giarrizza, I think you alluded to it before. Do you want to say a couple words about what that is?
So Challenge Day is an opportunity for us to bring large groups of kids together. And the challenge is about how, loosely the challenge of how we come together and see the world through common lenses and work together and solve problems with one another. And so this coming year, believe it's going to be 8th graders. 7th, thank you. And we have the high school coming to watch it happening. So the idea would be that perhaps for next year, if we could make it work at the high school, we would expand it to the high school. And fit it through the themes of the E3 and all of that.
Terrific.
Okay.
I
Great
had the motion
opportunity.
in a second. All
Thanks,
in
Brian.
favor? I don't want to get yelled at for not having a phone.
Keep it
I got to get back
honest.
on my tick marks. Action item J is the approval of special education services. A second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. K, approval of agreement between North Shore and the North Coast Psychological Services. Is there a
Motion.
motion?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. L is the approval of a budget transfer. We need to move $62,000 to cover special education contracts. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? M, approval of an agreement between North Shore and Samuel Mazer for costume rentals and consulting. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second? Questions or comments? All in favor? N, approval of a health services agreement with Huntington. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor? We move on to the very fabulous item O, which is board committee reports. We will-
If the chair permits, I have a an issue I have to deal with yet tonight.
I would be happy to move the Wellness Committee report up if you would like to report
That's
first,
what
Ms. Commander.
about to request. Thank you. Thank you. We've had 2 meetings, one in December and one in January of the Wellness Committee. Obviously, working very, very closely with the idea of planning on incorporating health and wellness into all levels of our program. We started talking about the review of the wellness, specifically the nutrition policy, given that in light of some of the federal restrictions that have been changed, we would like to avoid finding catch this vegetable and maintaining the policy we had developed last year. So that was very important to us. We would appreciate a follow-up with elementary level teachers that really addresses not to exclude students from physical activity as punishment in terms of their overall wellness. We had a rather long discussion about Red Ribbon Week and its addressing substance abuse. I think that if we want to make this a successful effort, I think we need to develop a strategy that reflects a district-wide approach. We have a lot of piecemeal things going on that have no contours. So I think having one person probably be responsible for planning those activities and some coordination K through 12 makes really a lot of sense, as opposed to some of the things that we're doing now that are very, very disjointed. We really have made an agreement to focus on anxiety and stress in all of our discussions this year, and ensuring opportunities for both physical exercise and mindfulness activities on all levels as well. We've had discussions about ways of promoting wellness for our staff. One of our members went out to the community to see if we could arrange some discounting for some activity after school for our teachers, and that was successful. That was reported at our January meeting that those facilities have been contacted and those arrangements have been made. The remainder of our last meeting really focused on developing a survey for teachers to provide us with some feedback and identify specific stressors that are very specific to the children in their classroom. Whether those are times for exams, lack of sleep, lack of coping skills, if we could get a sense of what that looks like on every grade, that would help us develop policy and programming to address that. So that is a report of the Wellness Committee. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Up and I would like to excuse myself.
Thank you, Joanna. We appreciate it. Thank you for the report. Bond steering.
Good evening. I think Dr. Girizzo covered much of what I was going to say
Oh, I'm
about
sorry.
bond steering. I think we've heard it now about 3 times, so I don't want to belabor
apologize.
the matter. But the list of, the wish list, as I call it, of items that the administration, the faculty, and the board would like to do, and the list of things that need to be done is really extensive. So I would encourage the public, we can't do this without you, to fill out those surveys that are going out January 29th, correct? And to attend the meetings with our architects and members of the board to let us know what's important to you. They are your tax dollars, and we need your input as to what priorities you would like the board to set in terms of the bond, so that we could do it in a cost-neutral way and meet the needs of the community. And come to our next, what was February 28th board meeting?
Yes.
February 28th board meeting, and also give us your insights at the comments from the public. It's important that we have your input. I can't emphasize it enough. So thank you.
Thank you. Those were good points, Dad. Thank you. Construction steering, I think it's going to be Dave.
Okay. Construction steering was short this week, which was always a surprise. I'll briefly run through a few things that we're working on. The high school mansard roof tile, as you may have noticed or heard discussed was installed in the wrong color. That's going to be a fix. It's going to be insured, but they will not start until it gets warmer. The contractor wanted to work early, but there's no sense when it's going to be 19 degrees for a high in solving that problem. So it will be starting in the spring. The Smart Bond work has been approved. Elliott is working with SED and BOCES, and they're hoping the February break we can get some work done. We are moving forward with the ceiling in the high school cafeteria. The plans are up at SED, and we're working with an independent review to try to expedite. The old bond, which is the one that we're finishing up, the number 99% complete was thrown around, a little bit of paperwork, some T crossing and I dotting, but we're almost there. The alternative energy and photovoltaic issue is something that will be rolled into the bond, hopefully, and that can hopefully be something that will make us greener, be cost efficient, in concert with an EPC, an energy performance contract.
And reduce the amount of the bond.
Yes, exactly, which is important. Certainly getting greener and healthier and paying for itself in a certain limited time.
Yeah, no, the synergy there is
Win,
fantastic.
win, win, win. And they have had some preliminary meetings with some companies to discuss how that would be. At the transportation facility, we had asked for them to discuss the idea of a back ramp out, if that was possible in some kind of crisis or situation. So we are looking into that. It's probably a little up high in the sky, but it's something that we had asked to look at. So the district is going to review that for us. And we discussed the entry plan. It's coming along. And I believe, Peter, I don't want to give anything away, but I believe we'll hear from that budget time, hopefully, for 1920.
Entry plan.
The enter the front
The new paving, the bush removal.
The 6-year journey I've been on.
The sign,
It's a good journey.
the electric sign.
It's going to be fabulous. It'll have been worth the
I'm going to be
wait.
collecting Social Security by the time it's done.
Yeah. So we'll make that, yes, we will make that part of the budget
Oh, my.
process. Absolutely.
And that is, that was construction steering.
Thank you, Dave. Policy goes to Tim for
Uh,
budget.
Yes, the policy committee last met in mid-December, and we've, or Peter mostly developed a very efficient way of looking at a large number of policies. And we examined parts, the first part of the 4000s, which deal with instruction. And Rob and the principals had offered some suggestions to language. I don't think it's anything really substantive in terms of changes, but changes to language. That was about it in terms of, any changes. But when we got to the issue of assessments, I had asked whether the district had ever considered a policy on return of assessments. Where I teach, we do have a policy. The recommendations concerning the time frame for return of assessments in the secondary schools. And I shared with Peter and the committee the Great Neck policy on return of assessments. And Peter referred those to the building principals to get some feedback from them on that particular issue.
Tim, does that include putting grades in the portal?
Well,
Because it should.
we haven't, we don't have a portal at this point where parents can view the grades. So that's,
In Great Neck.
that is something we're transitioning to this next semester. We're piloting it, and it's by choice for teachers. And then next year, it'll be fully implemented.
Because it's a huge issue at the high school, the grades not going in the portal in a timely manner so that the students and the parents know where they are in the course and can get the necessary help if they need it or not.
It would make sense that if you're going to look at returning assessments, have the conversation about.
We
About the
we
portal.
agree with you that they should be in there in a timely way, and when,
They're often not.
yeah.
And
Not
it's-
often, but
Not-
there are
it
a
happens.
significant number.
Yeah,
of
it
times
happens.
that happens.
Sometimes, in fairness to the teacher, sometimes what happens is teacher gives a test, kid is out, student is out, absent for that test, and they don't return the assessments to everybody until, but they
They-
can still post the grade, you know?
Right.
So there's some stuff in here. Sometimes teachers don't get them in, but sometimes there is a reason why they're not there. When it's brought to our attention, we always follow up and address it. But it is, while, to your point, while we're looking at
What's the
returning
expectation?
things,
Right, because-
what's the turnaround time for the
Yeah.
portal? It certainly begs the question.
So just to clarify, certainly getting the information in the portal in a timely manner is something we all agree upon. But are you saying there's an intrinsic value of returning the actual assessments educationally? That's something you want us to look at, as opposed to just getting the result? Or to be part of the discussion?
Yeah, I think, I mean, in my view, that assessments should be returned, not necessarily to be taken home. I can understand the rationale as to why teachers would want assessments back if you're using old AP questions and that sort of thing. There's a good reason. But students should be able to see not just the grade, but, and that's very instructive.
How they do.
Yeah.
Where they went wrong, and there are, at the high school, there are some teachers that allow the students to make corrections to the exam. It's part of the learning process, so, yeah. So
I
it's
feel like we
good for the kids
also-
to see it, I think.
I feel like we had finals, at least in the middle school, right, where the grade's gonna be posted in the portal, but you never see the test, ever, right?
No,
don't-
you could always ask to see it if you wanted to see it, though.
You could, and I know people that have, but that's very rare, and it really takes the parent, because at that point, school is closed.
Yeah.
But if we're trying to learn, you should get the opportunity to learn from every assessment.
Yes.
Okay, that was Tim. You're good?
I'm good, yes.
Thank you. Wellness we did. Safety is
Safety,
Lisa.
yes. So John Hall, our Director of Buildings and Grounds, he leads the meeting along with Dr. Giarrizzo, and some of what we speak about in the agenda overlaps with construction and some bond work that we were talking about, such as the installation of the air conditioning, which is, what is it, the third stage now, and it's up at New York State Department of Education for review. So, but that was
Yes.
on the list. This is a running list.
moving through. Yeah.
One point for safety, and it's a wellness thing too, is the indoor air quality that you've brought up, and that's something I think I guess CS Arch is going to be considering during the bond process as well. We talked about the front entrance of the high school and the digital sign. It's the issue
6
that
years.
is never going to go away. I'm going to miss it. I'll miss it if it does go away, if we do it from the meeting. It's that elephant in the room always.
It'll be back.
What's current? Oh, our new security person, the halftime, who will definitely give John Hall some breathing room as he's busy doing the pre-bond work and the construction that's going on. So that was a nice addition to meet. And we also have some additional security people for the additional shifts we're adding to the district to keep our students and staff and campus community safe. Let's see what else. A new issue about contact food allergies, which I think we can all remember in the elementary schools is a very big deal, and parents are very, very aware, and the nurses are very good at making sure that the children who are in the building that have food allergies are well protected in all areas of the building. It seems that as they move on to secondary buildings, it's not an urgency. So we're doing some work to put together a committee to make sure that the continuum of being aware of that of those allergies continues on to the secondary buildings in terms of containment and training of staff and even students. And actually, elementary students are pretty aware of their friends, and they're usually very, very thoughtful when they're instructed each year as to their peers who have serious food allergies. Another concern in new business was some the high school drop-off and dismissal periods with the buses, trying to deal with the cars and students darting between the buses, and our drivers, our staff of drivers brought that to the attention. They're very, very concerned about that. So thank you to our staff, to our transportation staff, for putting the safety of our students first. Even when the buses are not moving, they're sitting there collecting kids or dropping off kids, and kind of the nuttiness that, so we may need to readdress the logistics in the front of that. And the middle school too is mentioned, so.
We've already, excuse me, we've already been over there to assess it, and now we're developing the action plan to fix it.
Nice.
I thought there was a lot of staff out there at the high school this afternoon.
Oh, today? Oh, yes, with the midterms and it was crazy.
It was,
So they,
whew.
I really want to say that the gentlemen, our security people, and Mr. Bloom and Mr. Capianco, and they really do an amazing job.
They were
outside.
working hard, there's no question.
I
In the
don't
rain,
go
right.
onto the high school campus if I can possibly avoid it until after 3:30.
You and me both.
And I'm there by 7:15 if I have to be, so. And I think we need to, I think, educate our parents a little bit more as well. We talked about the wood shop and the metal shop and safety and keeping those areas clean. And the shavings and dust collection systems are being upgraded and looked at. So that's really about it. There was a lot of overlap from some of the other, from
That's true.
from construction and bonds. So.
Great, thank you for pointing out those points. I don't know who has left, is that you?
So Legislative Action Committee was not able to muster a quorum, but we did have a stalwart group of 4 members who were there, and it was a good conversation, I thought. We talked about unfunded mandates, both from the legislative, SED, and departmental, state departments, pushing down on us, how we could work with SuperLAC to try to reignite that. Reignite the fight against that, or at least identifying those. And Olivia, in the past, had provided us with sort of a list and some costs associated to them, so that may be resuscitated. So stay tuned for Deb.
I forwarded Deb a comprehensive list that the Nassau County School Superintendent's Council is
Great.
working on as well.
Terrific. Also, through SuperLAC, we talked about getting a legislative breakfast going again. Hopefully that's something that we can have on the calendar some point in the spring. We spent a lot of time talking about elections in schools, as we have talked about here, reviewed kind of what's been discussed, talked about the election law that was passed that day, which obviously was passed just that day, and talked about what the district's approach has been to it, as we again talked about here. We talked about deliverables and keeping on track and making sure that LAC accomplished what we wanted them to accomplish, and I thought Dr. Giarrizzo had a great suggestion, which has already been put into work, which is the idea of just a simple Google Doc that we could use to accrue the information, because the goal of LAC is to really research about 7 or 8 different topics to which they've been assigned, but if you don't have some tangible way to see what the results of that research are, who knows if you're getting anywhere. And some of these projects can't necessarily be solved in a year. Unfunded mandates, we're not going to have it all wrapped up by May, and
Well,
then
and they keep coming.
and they keep coming. So having a record of that, a log of what we do, is certainly helpful. It's also a way to monitor progress and making sure that we're moving forward. So Cheryl, our chairperson, has gotten that out, I think tonight, to try to get that information together, so we continue making progress. The goal would be to have an informative report with or without recommendations to the board by the end of the year as appropriate. So we're looking forward to that.
Thank you. Those are all the board committee reports, unless someone can come up with something we overlooked. Which brings us to comments from the public. The floor is now open. I think I've given a long description of public comment at this point, but please, microphone, name, and town of residence. You're more than welcome to share your thoughts with us. Thank you for coming.
Rob Mazzella, Glenhead. Just want to point out, I couldn't agree more with what Trustee Bizza had to say about the accessibility during the election night. It is very difficult to park, and we do need to be, I think, a little bit more considerate of the elderly, especially, and expecting them to have to walk a far distance is not right, quite frankly. In terms of events that night, I think it's a little disingenuous to suggest that there's no other night out of the 180 school days that exist that for those events to happen. I believe it's 180, yeah, if I'm listening to my wife complain about that, but I'm pretty sure it is. In terms of elections at the schools, I think there is some creative middle ground to the problem. We do have things, I think Trustee Vizza mentioned it as well, like superintendent days. You could perhaps schedule a superintendent day
We did, that's,
on the day of the school board elections so that no children are in the school buildings. It's something that could be considered. The issue of having different types of elections, special elections, so to speak, for bonds and stuff. It's just another day for another expense and another security concern. We could do something about that and require all school-related votes to happen on one day. I mentioned that last time, but that is something that we could conceivably consider. Just another radical thought. Look, if the community is so divided on this issue, you could put it to a vote as a proposition at the next election and ask the community, do they want to have elections in the schools, school-related elections. It's all stuff that can be considered and can be done. Unrelated topic, and I'm not going to minimize the safety issue, but the likelihood of something bad happening I think is small in comparison to something that happened a week or two ago where one of the students at the middle school was diagnosed with whooping cough. We do have, apparently a population of children who are not vaccinated, which does create risk for our children, and probably a greater risk than the security risk. It's my understanding that we do allow people to get exemptions from vaccinations for religious or medical reasons. I don't know if we're legally allowed to require proof of the religious or the medical exemption, or do we just have to take their word for it? But it does concern me that a child at the middle school had the whooping cough. In last unrelated, I would like to offer my assistance on anything you're doing about allergies. My son did have a peanut allergy, does have a peanut allergy, but he was at the elementary school and went through that. I think anything you do should keep in mind to try to avoid the appearance of isolating the children. They do feel isolated. I'm telling you that, even at the elementary school level. So if you do want assistance, I'd be happy to help.
we have anyone else? Thanks, Graham.
Grant Kletter from Seacliff again. Thank you is the first thing I have to say for giving us your view, for taking a stand and a position on it. So I appreciate that, and that's the only way we can sort of work through concerns is knowing where everybody stands and being able to discuss it. That being said, I have a lot more to say on this issue, and I feel some of what I have to say may be helpful for the board as they consider this, and I hope this is not a final decision of yours. That being said, what is the best forum? I'm happy to answer some of those things or address some of the things or all of the things that were brought up right now, and I'll do that. But what's the most effective way to discuss it? Because this setup doesn't lend itself to that. So tell me, I'll meet, I'll write more letters.
I do have a question.
What
though.
about LAC?
There is lack. I do have a
This
question.
goes beyond LAC, though. I appreciate that, and I'll talk to LAC, and I have individually with some of them, but I think it's a board decision that should happen now, separate from the legislative issues. Sorry.
No, please. There's a quote attributed to someone from the County Board of Elections indicating that we've never given any indication that we had any issues with the elections. That's not the opinion we have. We believe we have expressed it and have gotten nowhere. The quote in the petition, is that a quote? Is
I
it
can provide you a
verbatim?
letter.
And can you
Provide you
attribute
a letter of
it
that.
to
Absolutely.
someone? Because we're mystified by this.
Yeah, so to give you some background on that, I reached out to Chuck Levine probably about a year ago, sort of similar time that I reached out to you guys, and then Dr. Giarrizzo, and it wasn't specific to the board, or the school elections, it was specific to where's the legislation, what can we do here? And he advocated with the Board of Elections and wrote to them and asked that they be moved, and their response was that, among other things. They feel the schools are appropriate and safe and so on and so forth, and it makes
Certainly
sense.
that,
But that this district has not spoken out against it or written, and I can get you, the exact quote, but I can get you the full letter. And that they're fine using the schools, and they've returned the forms in advance of the deadline. And I think that's one of the points, is that the school board election is one thing, the outside elections are another, but they are related. And, how can we not dispute it, at least, with the County Board of Elections, and refuse, as other districts have, and say, we're not signing I believe it's an MOS, if that's correct. How can other schools say, we're not signing it? Because, doing that puts us not only in a position to say, yeah, sure, come into our school, but I think it opens everybody up to some liability, because now you've said, not only are you making us do it, we're accepting it. Come on in, we'll take that liability for anything that would happen in a variety of issues.
Grant, I haven't signed them since I've been here.
I'm saying.
I have not signed them since I've been here.
I was going to say, I haven't
I
seen
have
one.
not signed them.
That's great to hear. They've said otherwise, so we should correct that.
This
But
is why
I agree.
Right, this is why we're going like, what
Yeah,
is
yeah.
happening here? Why does it say this? Who is saying that we're saying this? We believe,
Yeah. It was
we've
the
been
Nassau
acting in
County
entirely
Commissioner,
other ways.
the Nassau County Commissioner, the Democratic one from the Board of Elections. But I'll get you that letter so you can address it with them. So back to
Anyway,
my
but
point. Do you
Marion,
want me to go
wanna-
through a few things?
Marion had a point. I was going to let her.
No,
elaborate on
I
if she
was
wanted to.
going to say you should really come to our next SLAC meeting, which if I look on my calendar, I can tell you when it is. It's a more informal group. It is open to the public. LAC meetings are board subcommittee meetings, which are open to the public. And we're always looking for assistance in, how to address these issues, and whatever information you have will be welcome. If I could just find
I
the
would
next
be happy to
meeting.
attend,
It's
yeah.
February 12th. It's at 7:30 in
Here
room
somewhere.
A4. And since it's going to be something that's on our agenda, we'd love to have you come speak.
That would be great, and I appreciate that.
And it's a smaller group. It's just a little easier to deal with. More
That's
back
great,
and forth.
and I think that would be helpful, and I appreciate that. As far as directing some of the specific board points that were raised here, can certainly be addressed there, but how can I communicate with you guys that are ultimately the decision makers on
Well,
this?
LAC reports to the board, as you saw from the committee reports, and if there's anything that would be significant that we think requires board action, we'd bring that to the board. And we've done it in the past where we've worked with Super LAC on things like testing and APPR, and we've written letters with the other districts through Super LAC, and we've brought those letters to the Board of Education, and the board has signed off on that, and we've sent out those letters. We've worked in concert with other districts on having flyers or letters sent to our state legislators. So there's a variety of ways that we can, LAC can effectively communicate with the board and with the community. So I think it's, I mean, I think it's worthwhile because not everyone, I think, is focused on this issue in the community. And through LAC, we can get the word out to other members of the community. And if they start petitioning our local legislators. So we've done letters, sample letters that we've distributed in the elementary schools through the PTOs. So there are, I think it would be a worthwhile use of your time.
Be happy to be there. If you think that's the way and the only way that I should approach this and as
Well,
it relates to the board.
It's an
I'll
A
do
way,
that.
and that's the only
The floor
way.
is yours. If you have points that you want to make now, if the board emails are online, if you have other information you want to provide us with.
Sure.
We can't, the only time we can talk together and discuss things and respond is in public, but we will certainly hear you.
Right. So, okay, so if I send you a letter or email, this board, you cannot respond. You
We
will-
can acknowledge it, but there's no way with email for us to discuss a response.
Okay.
And the board members don't have individual voices. Our voice is literally only through the votes we take in public. The rest is just me gossiping with you if I
Absolutely.
respond. But we will read it.
Right.
I don't want to misrepresent that, like, if
No,
I
no,
say
and that's what
something,
makes
I'm
this
like, that the
process
board
difficult is
yes.
how do we facilitate a discussion about this? And I think LAC is one way. As
LAC
opposed to
can
me
have an actual
stating
discussion,
something,
yes.
sitting down, hearing
Yes.
other views and not being able to. So, you tell me. I'm happy to send you guys all a group email letter and lay out everything that
That's
as it
fine
related to
too.
this.
We-
I'm happy
we
to talk
won't-
about it now.
Just that
there
not-
is
not
no
all
one
7
here
of
that
us will
won't read
respond.
every word that
There's no one here
Lear
who
said.
won't read every word that you send us in a letter.
Absolutely.
Right.
I will do that then. I'll do that right after this meeting. To that point,
You'll find LAC more satisfying with the back and forth, though.
just to that point, though, I have sent letters, and for those board members that weren't here last year, I don't want you to think a petition was our way to just, go crazy and get the community riled up, and that's not the case. There's been a group of us that have been very close to this issue, and I've approached it in many ways, and one was a letter to the board and the superintendent, and unfortunately, we had no response. So that's why if I think we're clear now, and I will write that letter, and I will address it, and I'll be happy to talk at LAC wherever you want,
And I think we need the community's involvement. That's important. There's no
Absolutely.
question.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Emily Dalto, Old Brookville.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. My question is about the bus transportation. I have children in both the public school here and in private school. I'm concerned with the contracted busing that we have. Why isn't all of our students entitled to the North Shore buses since we have our own bus company and paying for it? I mean,
Do you want me to answer that? Can I take it? Okay.
I think I know the answer,
So
but I
what
think
if-
the professional answer would probably be best. Go ahead.
Okay. So we have a fleet of buses that we transport kids to. I don't know, I'm not quite sure how many there are private versus public routes at this point in time. But we try to accommodate as many as we can with our own buses and our own drivers, but we can't. We just don't have enough buses or drivers to accommodate all the routes to all of the schools, both public and private. So when that happens, we have to contract that out. That number has decreased over time because we like to transport our own kids. As best we can, it's actually cheaper to do it that way, but we just can't. We don't have the man/woman power or the buses to do that. That's why.
well, I think it's really important that the board look at that because, I mean, for this particular school, which is less than 10 minutes away, we're looking at a bus ride over an hour for a young kindergartner, first grader. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a long time to be on a bus, when you have to go all around town from here to, it's really too much. An hour and 20 minutes, it's unreasonable for any child, but especially a young elementary school child. Again, we have one of the, I don't even know if there's any other school district that has their own bus company. We voted for it, we wanted it, and it's not made available to all of the children in the district. And that really concerns me. As a parent, I can't be at two places at the same time, picking up one at the bus stop, picking up the other one at 3 o'clock, another one gets out at 4. It's really a hardship on parents, you know. I mean, you try to carpool, but you know, they really have to look at it. I know I had spoken to Michelle from transportation, and she said it wasn't really about the money. It's more about the routing, but it really needs to be addressed. It's a really big concern
Okay.
for a lot of us.
Juliana, and she's right. It is. We try to do it obviously in a fiscally responsible way, but it is it is about the routes, and we have the resources to support the routes.
Right. I know. I was asking her. She's like, you know, make sure you have all your paperwork in early so we could look at everything. And I
Yeah.
asked her, when could you give me an answer? And she was basically, well, the summer. But
Yeah.
the summer's too late. You know, I mean.
The private school transportation requests are due April 1st.
Right.
So very important that they get in by that date.
Right.
And then we have the spring and summer to route all those.
I
Not
feel like
just
I'm
route, but you have to send the things we can't
Correct.
rate out to bid. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there's a process we're required to
Right.
go through by law
Yeah.
with bidding, and it's.
We share bus routes with other districts to share
Right.
costs. So there's it takes a little time to get that moving.
Right. I know I know she had said that, you know, certain schools they took back, and that's
Mhm.
great, but maybe they need to look at some more because it's
Yeah,
a big deal.
We're
you know.
definitely trying every
Yeah.
single year because it is much more cost effective for us to do the transportation ourselves
I would think so.
than it
right.
is to
And it's
contract it
your
out. Yeah.
employees and everything else. Yeah,
Right.
and nobody wants a kid on a bus.
I mean, it's
that
really
long,
long.
yeah.
It's not even like a half hour I could deal with,
Yeah.
you know, 40 minutes. It's really long, you
Yeah.
know, for a young kid.
Uh-huh.
That's crazy. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be short. Elizabeth Yakos.
Thank you for coming.
Of Brookville. Hello. Just to touch on the busing issue, I also have children in private, and it's a 7-minute ride by car, and the bus company has my children on the bus for an hour and 45 minutes. So after many
Each way?
each way. Yep. It picks up my kids, it goes to Glen Cove, then it comes to Seacliff, picks up some other kids, then it goes to Roslyn, then it goes to East Williston, and then it comes back to Old Westbury. So imagine, my kids tour all of Nassau
Yeah, I
County.
don't even know why the bus company would want to do it, right? It seems insane.
So when I've called the bus company about the route, they said to me, well, it's North Shore's fault, because they're too cheap to pay for a bus, even though you have, you know, whatever it is, 10 kids from the district going on it, they will only pay for seats. So we have to maximize the seats on the bus. If there's 60 seats on the bus, we're going to go around to as many districts as we can to collect those children. So given the fact that we do have our own bus company, and we're one of the few districts that have that, why can't we accommodate children even that do leave the district by at least getting us our own bus to go to a school instead of having it
will,
shared with 5 other districts?
I'll follow up on this personally tomorrow.
I
for
appreciate
you.
that. Thank
You're
you so
welcome.
much. Thank
No
you.
problem.
Thank you.
It's like, what do those contracts look like?
Okay.
Yeah, things to look at. Public comment is still open, if anyone else has anything. Thank you for sticking it out with us till this point in the evening. Okay, that was comments from the public. We have already done old business. We are up to new business. Trustees, those of you remaining? There's no new business. Motion to adjourn? Motion. There you go. See, no one yells we didn't vote when I say adjourned.